Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we will be interviewing Brother Dr. Clinton Lee.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have three of our usual four hosts. We have Very Worshipful Brother David Colbeth from King Solomon Lodge number 60 in Auburn, Washington. Brother Craig Graham from Kalamalka Lodge number 160 in Vernon, British Columbia. I'm Matt Appel, and I'm a member of Mill Creek 243 in Montlake Terrace, Washington. And we are honored to have with us this evening Brother Dr. Clinton Lee, who is a member of the Grand Lodge of British Columbia and Yukon as well. Dr. Lee, I guess I'm not even sure which lodge are you a member of up there?
Well, I actually belong to two lodges, Matt. So I'm with Aviation Lodge and with Prince of Wales.
So interesting. So is Aviation Lodge like an affinity lodge where the people are interested in that field? Or
originally it was supposed to be that way, but now they try and allow all Masons to fly high.
Excellent. Well, so our first episode when we interview someone is generally we start off with your general Masonic background. So how did you come to be a Mason? What attracted you to Masonry?
Well, I think the most obvious aspect for me was a journey that began about 25 years ago. So I've been a Freemason for 25 years plus. And it really began with wanting to be with men of stature and nature that makes you improve yourself to be a better person. So I think in Masonic parlance it would be the rough ashlar into the smooth ashlar. And that has always been a cornerstone wherever I've traveled in this world, of which I've been to over 115 countries. And for me, those principles and guidelines have always held steadfast. So that really was what really precipitated me wanting to join and know more about Freemasonry.
And did you join Aviation Lodge first then, or Prince of Wales?
No, actually, no. I was raised in Africa. I'm an Irish Mason.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm an Irish Mason. So I then, traveled, and then when I emigrated, I joined. Oh gosh, they're no longer around. I think it was Alliance Lodge. Yeah. So after Alliance Lodge, then they, unfortunately, due to falling numbers, a lot of the lodge members went to different lodges. And that's how I landed up at Aviation. And Aviation, because it's Canadian work, and Prince of Wales, because it's the ancient work, which I would always like to maintain, because whenever I travel, especially when I go to Asia, into Hong Kong or to Singapore, they use the ancient work. So it's a lot more easier when you're visiting them.
Interesting. So you said you've been to lodges in several different countries. Is that you travel a lot for work then? Just out of curiosity, you're traveling for work and visiting lodges, or
are you traveling for
Masonic purposes? Or?
Somehow, in between my studies, I became an international wine and spirit judge. So I travel and I give, I would say, fairly decent lectures on whiskey, cigars, wine, sake, port, sherry, and always a huge asset at the festive boards, I can assure you, when questions are being raised. And then, of course, my doctorate is in cultural diversity and organizational behavior. And my one area that I really find an enormous amount of pleasure and wealth and sharing with others is culture and etiquette. So I wrote a book called Master the Art of Manners, which you can find at any fine bookstore. And of course, you can certainly buy it online. And that was a huge success. Being involved in the world of wine and culture, I'm the executive director of the Asia Pacific Wine and Spirit Institute. And my staff said to me, Dr. Lee, I said, yes, what can I do? And they said, well, we'd like you to start a social media. I said, okay, what would you like me to do on social media? Well, we'd like you to talk about wine and we'd like you to talk about the spirits. I said, well, yes, I can to a degree, but I find it somewhat limited because I think that the world of wine is not just wine itself. When you drink a bottle of wine, let's say 1960, if you ever have the chance, you are literally recording through your mouth, through your senses, that bottle. It reflects what happened in that year. It's a statement. It's a testament. And we are the custodians of that bottle while it's in our cellar. And when we partake and share with our fellow friends or even brothers. And I think of that as, as brothers, we are custodians of the craft while we are here until we go up into the Great Lodge. So for me, there's a lot of analogy together. And so I've also given a lot of talks, all over the world. I just came back from the University of Georgia giving a talk on etiquette and first impressions that you give. Highly, highly important, which I reflected with them. And I said, I shared with them, I gave a talk earlier on to a group of investment bankers. And investment bankers are notorious for being clothed from top to bottom, from the top of their head to their silk-lined ties and their immaculately shining shoes. Everything is impression. And I started the talk and I said, you only get one chance to give a good impression. And if you lose that chance, that's it. So I believe that for the fellow brothers in the craft, it's really important that our posture, our mannerisms, the way we speak reflects not only the best of ourselves, but the best for our lodge and the best for the craft, wherever we may be. So coming back to your question, Matt, my travels, yes, part work, part pleasure and work, and, teaching at universities. I've given some lectures at the University of Vrije in Holland, and I've done a fair amount of things. I think the crevices in my face bear evidence to that.
So, Brother Lee, when you entered Freemasonry all those many years ago,
Yes.
and I some of those lodges sound familiar to me in Vancouver because my mother lodge was Caledonia 136 in Vancouver. It doesn't exist anymore either. I had a long absence from the craft as well. But when you entered the craft in Africa, did you mostly do it out of your own volition, out of wanting to find out about masonry? Did you have somebody that was kind of like a mentor to you that brought you into the craft and introduced you? How did your journey in that respect go?
We have 4 brothers on this particular screen, and all our journeys into the craft, I'm sure, were exceedingly diverse as to how we entered. But there is a common thread, a mutual bond, a bond where we see a good man, and obviously, somehow, And I'm sure in your cases it was a certainty, but mine perhaps was an inadvertent error that they saw something and they wanted to bring me in. So it was really through that. You know, we all walk the righteous path. We all have experiences in life. And yes, I think especially today, we need to have a mentor. And with the brothers that we have, we are mentors to one another. And that's how it really began. People, there's a saying, an old saying, is it not? Birds of a feather flock together. So that's how my catalyst began. Intellectual, people of good and sound precepts, and those that want to do good, not only for themselves, but for others. Thank you. That's a great question, Craig.
No worries. No worries.
What-
And then I was going to say too, did your interest, well, because this is almost more of a vocation that you have rather than just an interest in etiquette and civility and things like that. Did it form around the same time, or did that to sort of come about at a different point in your life?
That question, I would say, is the yeast that you put into the mousse when you're trying to make wine, Craig. You obviously are a master questionnaire. So I grew up in a time when there were no cell phones. I grew up in a time where people were based on their color. So I was not allowed to go to restaurants growing up, people of my color. In fact, if you were not white, you were not allowed to attend certain schools. You weren't allowed to ride buses. You weren't even allowed to sit in certain playgrounds. Everything was based on color. And it was through that backdrop that you learn to appreciate the finer qualities of true people. And it really is an impetus for you to become a better person, a stronger person, and a person who has more open views, not just based on color. So I understand what it's like to be differentiated specifically on color, which is a tragic but realistic fact that still happens today. And when you think about how this all began, going towards my Masonic journey, the Masonic journey for me was a place where color was not a consideration. It was the character of the individual, the bone, the spine of how they looked at life, what they wanted in life, and what they wanted to contribute in life. And that has taken me across, and I've met many brothers across the world, outstanding in their field, highly intellectual, but not just based on intellect, but on good, sound, moral character. So once again, thank you, Craig.
Mhm.
Were you raised in Canada and then were you traveling to Africa? How did that connection happen?
I was born in Africa.
You were born in Africa.
Born in Africa, and I was raised in Africa.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I was educated there for the first part of my career.
Okay.
So I know what it's like. So when people tell me it's tough, yeah, there's different degrees of tough. But imagine walking into a restaurant as a young schoolboy in a team, and all your schoolmates can eat at the restaurant, but they don't allow you in. So luckily, all my teammates, they all walked out and said, well, if you're not coming, we're not going. So, and I think this is where these are lessons that we learn. And we learn, obviously we learn the precepts in lodge, in any lodge. There's discipline, there's what we expect. You undertake someone's word. There's certain signs, there's certain aspects which we all give due respect to, because this is based on the annals of history, on the annals of practice, on the wisdom of those that have walked before us. So in many ways, Freemasonry is an extension of life.
Symbolically and physically.
In
Yes.
all ways.
And I apologize if I missed, I wasn't just focused on your message. What brought you to Canada then, to BC? Was it work
Oh,
or
the
family?
summer weather, and the raging blue skies and the beautiful cuisine, you know.
Yes.
No. It was I decided that if I'm going to emigrate, I'll emigrate to a country that I feel has got the great principles of what I believe in. And I've always wanted to live by the sea. And Canada is renowned for its blistering hot temperature. So I thought I should go somewhere. That's right. I think I should go somewhere where it is relatively warmer, and hence in BC. So that was my choice, West Coast.
Well, it's a good choice. Although I do we do have our own version of the monsoon season in British Columbia, as you're well aware of by now. In fact, we would be in the middle of it. It's a little bit drier up here in Vernon, but it's also colder in the winter as well. So, but those are the choices we make. So,
well,
yeah.
Craig, I think you need to be with me in Asia when the monsoon really hits.
Yeah, you know what? I've been told that. Someone said to me, said, "No, you don't know what rain is. Like, yeah, you think you do it, but when until you're in Hong Kong or Singapore in the middle of monsoon season, that's a real education on what the rain is."
That's true. That's true. They call it the typhoon season as well after. And typhoon is a variation of a Chinese word called taifeng. So taifeng means big wind. And somewhere along the line that became typhoon. Yeah.
At the risk of this becoming a weather podcast, that's one of the reasons why I live out here too. We had I often tell people I don't own a snow shovel and I don't have an air conditioner, and so far it's worked out fine. And so that's what I tell people back in New Jersey where I grew up.
You are a wise man.
But so you came to the podcast through Stephen, who unfortunately couldn't be here this evening, but he heard you speak at the Grand Lodge of British Columbia annual communication. I guess it was a couple months ago now, 6 months or so ago.
Yes.
Did someone? I'm not asking this well. Did you come to their attention because they were looking to talk about civility, and they said, "Oh, we have Dr. Lee, who's a great resource on this," or how did that come to happen? There we go. That's probably the best way to answer.
That's a great question. I'll have to answer it in a rather circuitous manner, if that's all right, Matt.
Please.
So how it came around was I gave a presentation to the ladies when the Grand Master was holding court. And of course, the ladies, there's always a polite and well-needed entertainment for the ladies. And I was selected to give them a afternoon's presentation of festivities on etiquette, on wine, how they should drink wine, what they should drink, what are the niceties, and how this politeness extends itself, not only within the Masonic circles, but within life itself. That drew the attention of the Grand Master, the past Grand Master, Mark Forster. And he invited me directly to give a talk on civility. And through that, I was introduced to one of your former guests, the past Grand Master Russ Chervonia. So I've met up with Mark, and I've taken the Masonic civility course and have passed that. And we spoke about the need to see what could be done to expand I would say the subscription to this aspect of civility. And that's where I am, and that's how my speech came about. So I have spoken to, and I've met with other grandmasters and other jurisdictions via meetings on Zoom about what is civility, and really what is etiquette, and how does it all come about. So that is how I got involved in addressing that very august conference, Matt.
I think it's a critical connection that you make that I haven't necessarily heard, or maybe haven't been listening for, is the connection of civility and etiquette, and how you hold yourself and others as part of that civility concept.
Well, I gave a TED talk on civility, and we live in very tumultuous times. In fact, we live in tumultuous times, but we live in interesting times. And I could quote a Chinese saying to say, oh yes, we live in ancient, difficult time, interesting times, but they're also the most difficult times. And I look at the situation we're in right now. We can only imagine, we can't recall, but our grandparents at the turn of the 1900s, some of them were still using firewood to cook the food. But it was also the advent of, excuse me, mass electrification. And you were getting electric fridges, electric stoves. It changed the art of cuisine. It changed going out. The entire landscape, society changed. Right now, everybody has a cell phone. Everybody, through means of technology, look at us. We're communicating using this technology that really didn't come to the fore until COVID. But this cell phone has changed structurally, systemically, etiquette and culture. Because now the younger generation are not going to libraries to study. They're going to Starbucks and they're putting on headphones. And I'm sure I can ask any parent there of any teenager, they are struck with amazement. What are you doing? I'm going to Starbucks to study. Because they still recall their days of study. So you have this old guard who wants to tell the young people, you know what? Study hard, get a job, things will work out. But they're living in a world of cybersecurity, Bitcoin, blockchain, NADs, stem cell, cryptocurrency, which most of us don't know anything about. So how do you tell these next generation what they should be doing when we ourselves have no idea? Then when you add in this aspect that we have 6 living generations living together side by side for the first time, and then you have 8 billion people plus, the largest number you will ever have. So coming back to etiquette and culture, if you think about it, for the last close to 1,000 years, you've always had a white Anglo-Saxon power, starting with the Portuguese, their empire, Vasco da Gama, Ferdinand Magellan, move on to the Spanish, then move on to the Dutch, the Hansa, and the Dutch East India Company. Then you move on to the French, the huge empire that they had, and they still have parts of it. I mean, the one you could say is the CAR currency that they have in West Africa, and then the British Empire. And then after that, you now have Pax Americana. So yes, in those days, you sit up straight, you eat with your fork in your left hand, Sometimes you'll switch it if you're on the East Coast, and you don't talk with your mouth if it's full of food, right? So that would we say is the etiquette. I mean, etiquette really began from Louis XIV. It was due to a Scottish gardener. He had this extremely exquisite section of the garden, and yet all the lords and nobles were running across this beautiful patch and laying waste his beautiful work. So he went and he approached Louis XIV and he said, look, this is what's happening. So what Louis XIV did, he came up with what he called etiquette, a letter, which they put on and made like a little rope with the letter, etiquette. And that was the origin of how etiquette then started to snowball. And it became more and more the norm. How do you behave? How do you stand? How do you greet people? Now, of course, in Freemasonry, we also have that, how we address one another, how we stand, how do we salute, or, give acknowledgement to different people. It's really an extension of that. But now, you have over 3 billion people out of the 8 billion who don't use a knife and fork to eat. They don't even use the alphabet to talk or write with, right? That's India and China. They use their hands. They use chopsticks. So suddenly, the world as we know it, what is etiquette and what is acceptable, doesn't mean that it's acceptable per se right across the entire world. I was giving a particular lecture to etiquette, culture, and journalism. And one of the questions that I posed, I said, let's say, for example, you are the journalist and you have to write a piece, a three-sentence piece on a new restaurant that specializes in steak. How would you write that in India? Given that Indians find you cannot touch cows and they roam freely, and how could you even do that? So this is the part of culture that I talk about. So during the speech that I gave, you're faced with this new world. You're faced with a generation that would far prefer this than human interaction. And quite honestly, so do I, at times. Why? Because you want knowledge, it's there. You can research it, and you can do it in depth, and you can do it in the quiet and the calm of your own home with a lovely tea or a coffee, rather than perhaps listening to numbskulls and imbeciles that think what they're saying is really true. And you have to sift through all of this. Now, the younger generation, they are far more savvy than all four of us put together sometimes, because they know, and they know how to operate. So knowledge per se is not power itself anymore. It's now the ability to know where to find the information. So if you think that we can just operate on the old Anglo-Saxon style, I think those days are over, right? And all you need to do is look at lodges today. Lodges, the numbers are dwindling. Why? Because we're getting old, and there have been older Masons than us, but they didn't have that issue. Why? Because now you want young Masons to come to lodge. You want to show them etiquette. You want to show them culture. But does that really happen? I think what we're seeing is you get a lot of, let's just say, Masons, and I say this with the greatest respect, who've seen a long life, who perhaps are not as open to new ideas, who believe we should follow this path, and I believe we should, but I believe there should be some flexibility, because if you don't change, it's like Newton's second law of thermodynamics. If you have a closed system, it will eventually die if you don't make a change to it. So we have now competitors. They don't come in the form of girlfriends. They come in the form of Netflix, Amazon, Prime TV, video games. So why would I want to go and sit for 2.5 hours sitting in one particular venue, and all I'm listening to is X, Y, and Z, thank you, and there's nothing there for me. So that's what precipitated the talk about etiquette, culture, and what we all need to do about the future of Freemasonry.
Well, Dr. Lee, thank you so much. That's a great opportunity to segue. We normally have this show, I don't know if you were able to look back or not, we normally have these in about 30-minute increments. And we invite you to come back to continue this conversation. I've got several questions written down, and I think that would be a great cliffhanger for us to dive into your message at the end of communication. So
you're sounding like a marketing person for the divers in Acapulco, David. Looking forward to it. Thank you very much indeed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Lee, for being with us this evening, and we're grateful to have you. And I'm sure Steve is jealous that he couldn't be here, but
so we finished recording now, right?
Well, we're about to be. We're gonna. I'll do a little outro here, and then we'll transition to another episode. But
sure.
Until then, we'd like to thank our listeners as well on behalf of David and Craig and myself and the absent Steve. And again, Dr. Lee, thank you for being here this evening. And we look forward to talking to you again on the Working Tools podcast. Goodbye.
Thank you, brothers. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.